Welcome everybody to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama, and joining me on location at Disneyland is my co-host Kate, aka the Disney Cicerone, and together we are Mom Street USA, bringing you a kind of hodgepodge topic this evening. We've got a couple little subtopics within our show tonight. So we are going to talk a little bit about solo parenting at the parks and give maybe some advice for that. Also talking about traveling in uneven numbers and thrill seekers and non-thrill seekers traveling together. So like I said, a little bit of everything tonight, but we wanted to hit some of these topics that our community has been asking about. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of just included them all. So Kate, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing really great. I've had a really nice trip so far at Disneyland, enjoying all of the Christmassy things that are there. It's been a very quick trip down here just to get a little bit of content, do a little live streaming, and have a little fun. So little bit of fun in the margin, but it's just fun. So of course it's fun.
Right.
But it's really fun to dig into these topics because I feel like they are ones that people ask us about a lot. And so it's nice to be able to touch on kind of how to plan when it's like it's a weirder situation in your party. So it's fun to dig into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these I haven't thought about because I maybe don't have experience doing them. So it's good. We love it when our community asks us these questions or says like, hey, could you do this in a show? Like, I think it'd be really helpful. You know, that's helpful to us to know what you guys are looking for as far as information. So we're excited to hopefully shed some light and bring you our advice, and hopefully it'll help somebody out.
Alrighty, well, shall we dig in with our first topic of the night, which would be solo parenting at the parks, which I'm not a solo parent because I am married, but I have solo parented at the park by only just me and my kiddo. So I do have that experience at least.
Yeah, and I think this could apply to lots of different situations, whether it be, Kate, I know you've done like one-on-one trips with some of your kids before. There are so many amazing solo parents out there that have kids, one kid, two kid, three kids, whoever, that might want to be taking trips to the parks. So we were asked this, and just like I said, we want to try to give some information regarding kind of what we suggest as people who frequent the Disney parks that might help you out if that's your situation. So the first thing that we will always suggest, regardless of no matter who you are, who you're traveling with, what your situation is you've got to do your research, which will surprise no one that is the top thing on our list.
Yes.
But it truly is. So the first thing that is really important, I think, whenever you start doing your research is deciding where you want to stay. And if you are solo parenting at the parks, there are a few more things you might want to consider that are different from when you might be traveling with other adults in your party. The biggest thing is the proximity and convenient access to the parks.
Yeah.
Because having to take even just one kid by yourself, multiple kids by yourself, whatever your situation may be, thinking about, do I want to try and brave the bus? Do I have a stroller? If I've got maybe a toddler with me, am I going to be on my own doing a stroller in the bus versus the Skyliner versus the monorail versus am I minivan? Am I Uber? Am I Lyft? Whatever your situation may be, that is a huge thing to really consider.
Yeah, because getting around is, I think that's one of the hardest parts, especially if you're traveling with littles, because sometimes you have to carry them if they get tired and all those kinds of things. So know what you're capable of, what they're capable of, and plan accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about, budget friendly versus convenient access to the parks is a really big one to consider. Obviously at Disney World, you've got a few more options that are more convenient access to the parks. Disneyland, you've got to just understand that unless you're really staying at a Disneyland hotel, but even then, most of the time you're going to be walking from wherever you're staying to get to the parks.
Yeah. I used to say, and I try to do only one park because the transfer is tough alone. So like rather than doing maybe a park hopper where you're going park to park to park, maybe just be like, we're just going to this one park this one day and then back. Not as applicable in Disneyland than Disney World. Disneyland is really easy to park hop. But Disney World, for sure, it's a lot of energy and time to get to a particular park and back. So
right. And really considering the biggest thing I think with that is just the stroller issue. If you're taking a bus, that stroller has to be completely collapsed. So you've got your stroller in one hand, the kid probably in the other hand, either holding their hand or holding them. But if you're taking the monorail or the Skyliner, you don't necessarily have to fold up your stroller. I will say the one thing about that is the Skyliner, you cannot have double wide strollers. You have to do, like, if you've got a double stroller, if you're doing 2 kids, you've got to do like the front to back ones. But other than that, that's a little bit more convenient in my personal opinion, because you don't have to fold up the stroller and deal with all of that.
Yeah. And once your kids are older, some of this stuff isn't as hard to do. Like I think I started taking my kids on solo trips when they were like 6 years old was the youngest I would go. And I wouldn't probably go any younger than that just for myself, because I knew what I was capable of at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can absolutely do it. Just know what you're capable of. But that's when I started doing it with my kids, because I knew that they could walk mostly by themselves and they could carry their own like small bag. And then I wouldn't have to manage all of that. So it does get a little easier as they get older, and you can maybe add in some more park hopping and stuff because they're just capable of more and they can carry their own stuff.
Right. Yeah, that makes a huge difference. I think also something to consider, we talk a lot about making your priority list and, planning out what attractions you want to go on. But I think considering how many people you're traveling with, and we'll touch more on this a little bit later when we talk about traveling in uneven parties, but do the rides seat 2? Do they seat 3? How many people are going to be able to fit in a Skyliner with you? How, like thinking about logistics like that too, when you're traveling and when you're the sole adult in the situation, other things to consider. And like I said, we'll go through kind of a list of 2 versus 3 versus more when it comes to rides here in a little bit.
Yeah, I have a question from Ryan, who I believe said he's going to be the cool uncle that would take the kids. And
love it.
I'm hearing that a lot, is like uncles, aunts, and grandparents, solo grandparents, and anybody who's going solo with kids to the park. So this is helpful. Ryan asked, if taking breaks, can we come and go into the park all day? And absolutely you can. Both Disneyland and Disney World, you can come and go as much as you need to. The only caveat to that is maybe on an extremely busy day like Christmas Day, if they reach capacity, then you can't get back in. That is so rare, really. Only maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas or maybe New Year's Day, like just those, like New Year's Eve. Those are probably the only ones that will probably ever hit capacity. So I wouldn't have to worry about that on a normal day.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing to consider when you're talking about looking at rides for your trip are the height requirements and how you're going to navigate those height requirements. Just as general rule of thumb, Walt Disney World, the range in height requirements is anywhere from 35 inches to 48 inches. Now, not every ride has a height requirement, but you just want to be really mindful if you've got kiddos that are under 35 and under 44 and under 48. There's multiple different kind of categories in there. If all your kids are 48 and up, then you're good to go.
But it's also something to consider if they're mentally, emotionally ready to go on those rides as well. Because like my kid started to be old enough for Tower of Terror at 4 years old, but he was not ready emotionally for Tower of Terror. I learned that the hard way. That was a big parenting fail, but he was my first, and you learn as you go. But yeah, those are also things to consider. And there just might be some things that you just don't get to go on that trip if you're by yourself and you don't have anybody else to watch your kiddo, and that's okay. You'll just enjoy other things on that trip. So manage your own expectations for that, and it's okay.
Yeah. And I will mention Disneyland has ride height requirements that range anywhere from 32 to 54. So it was interesting as I was looking and comparing that Disneyland has a little bit of a wider range of height requirements for some of their rides. So again, just look at the rides that you might think that your kiddos want to do. If you need help with that, reach out to somebody who can help you. We are more than happy to help you with that. I love doing itineraries, so send me a message.
Jackie's great at it too.
Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, considering those things, and then also considering age restrictions. And Kate was talking a little bit about this with, are they mentally, emotionally ready? Even if they're tall enough, are they ready? But then also, are they old enough to be able to ride? Disney World and Disneyland, their regulations for solo riders, guests under the age of 14 must be accompanied by a guest 14 or older to enter the theme park. So that's just getting into the parks. So anyone 14 and under has to be accompanied by someone older. To board an attraction, children under the age of 7 must be accompanied by a person age 14 or older. Now, that's Disney's rule when it comes to that.
Yeah.
However,
it's really interesting that that is that age. And I'm like,
that's my oldest. Like, my oldest is 7, and I cannot fathom, in my personal situation, sending him on a ride
alone. Yeah.
Alone.
I know. I was thinking about it for my 8-year-old, my daughter, and I was just like, no, like, not for a few years. Now, my son, who's 13, I'm like, oh yeah, he could totally handle that. And we could move up, and I could text him, and it would be like, he knows how to handle himself. He knows what to do. If there's an emergency, he's good. But I'm like, so it is Disney's rule though, and everybody parents differently, and everybody knows their kids. So there are parents that feel comfortable with that, and there's no judgment. It just feels a little surprising as a parent.
Yeah. But that also plays into those conversations about height requirements. Especially if you maybe if you're solo parenting with maybe 2 kiddos and they've got a fairly large age gap, that's something to consider, that maybe your older one, if they are, 12, 13, 14, you might feel comfortable saying like, yep, you go ahead on this thrill ride. I'm going to hang back with the little sibling and we'll wait for you to be done.
Right. Yeah. And like, we did that with my son, who wanted to do single rider for Space Mountain when we were in Disneyland Paris, and that he wanted to go. Nobody else really wanted to go again because that ride's intense over there. And it's like, you have at it, son. Like, we'll be over here when you're done. And it was great. And that worked out well. And I also say that this works out. We can talk a little bit more about this later when we talk about seating, but it does work out too if you have an older kiddo and then a younger one, that they can actually sit together too, because you can't have somebody who's under 7 sitting by themselves on the ride. So that also helps if you have an older sibling for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will just mention, as we're talking about age restrictions, that something to note in Disneyland is that anyone under 18 must be accompanied by a parent or legal guardian between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. in downtown Disney. Disney Springs doesn't seem to have any sort of regulation on that I could find on the website, which I thought was interesting. There probably is something, and it just wasn't jumping out at me on the website. But
there's no nightlife over at Disney World. No, everybody goes to bed early. It's a weird thing. Like,
that's true.
It's like midnight when the park closes, so everybody's out late. But it's 9 p.m. Everybody's tucking in for the night at Disney World. Like,
we're sleepy in Disney World.
It's fine. Not night owls. I get it. Night owls go to Disneyland, not Disney World.
Yeah. Oh, Dalen is saying that's a local to Anaheim curfew for downtown Disney, which totally makes sense. If that's more of like an Anaheim regulation. But just keep that in mind.
That impact Disneyland, like fireworks and whatnot too. So that makes sense.
Right. But just really my biggest thought about that is keep that in mind. If you're traveling with teenagers who are under 18, you can't like send them to grab food in downtown Disney without accompanying them. So just like those types of situations, keep that in mind. After 10 p.m., they may be stopped and questioned.
Probably sent back.
Yeah, like, nope, sorry.
All right. So next up, we have take photos of everything, which is such a smart tip. I'm really glad that you put this in here, Jackie. That's always something that we always did at the beginning of the day, is take a picture of our kids' outfit for the day, what they look like, so that if they get lost, we can be like, here's what they look like today. Because, different days, different outfits, different hairstyles, whatever, like this is exactly what they look like. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this was something that I don't even know where I learned it from, but I learned it on like right before we went with my son. And it just gave me a little bit of peace of mind, because Disney is crazy busy. There's so many people and so many crowds depending on where you are and when you're going. And if you've got kiddos, especially that are really independent and want to walk, if they're in the stroller or, you can buckle them in, it's a little bit different. But if you've got kiddos that are like, nope, they refuse and they just want to walk, having that photo of them can be super helpful. If you get separated, if you lose sight of them in the crowds, it happens. Again, we never judge ever because it happens. But having that to show the cast members to be like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what they look like today. This is what they're wearing. Super duper helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think making a plan if you are separated, like that's something we always did when my kids were little. I'd always show them the like cast member name tags.
Same. Yep.
This is what you look for when you're lost, if you get separated, if you don't know what to do and you're scared, whatever, like go find this, like these people know what to do. Mm-hmm. Just look for this name tag. And so I just printed out like a picture of it and showed them at the time. You just pull it up on your phone now because
Well, we do it usually right when we walk into the parks. It's like whatever, after we're through the tap styles, we don't stop in the middle of the tap styles and be like, look, this is what it looks like. Like once we're in the park a little ways.
In the tap style, like, sorry.
But there are usually cast members stationed, especially if you're on Main Street, they're all over the place, especially early in the morning or wherever you are. But the first cast member that I see, I usually stop and say like, okay, this is what their name tags look like. And then it gets a little tricky when you go places like Galaxy's Edge. Their name tags look a little bit different, so you just got to kind of be aware of those types of things. But showing them like, okay, if you see somebody with this name tag, if you need help, they are a safe person for you to be able to ask. I think is super, super important. And then, with older kids, like set a meeting spot. Like you said, if, you're sending your kid off to do a single rider line or go on something solo, like, okay, when you're done, this is where we're going to meet. If you can't find me, you've got your phone, I've got my phone, call me. Like just having a plan for meeting back up if you guys decide to go separate ways.
Yeah, and if you're not ready to do phones with your kids, because as your kids get older, we also do like the Gab watch. We have like the watches that can text, but only the people that you allow them to text, and they don't have apps and stuff on them. So those are really helpful because they also have a location tracker on them, so you can easily find your kids. I know that other people have also put air tags and stuff on their kids, so that if they can locate them that way. And then Catherine also mentioned here, they have those temp tattoos that you can put, and then if lost contact with your phone number, we use those for years. And I put them so they wouldn't be in all the photos because I was like, I don't want those in my family photos. I think like under their arm. You really didn't see them, but they were easy for them to show somebody if they needed to. And those are really easy because they'll stay on for pretty much the whole trip, or at least half of it before you have to refresh it. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and if you put like a liquid bandage over top of them, it helps them last even longer. And again, you're probably going to need a couple even for your trip, but they'll at least stay on for longer than a day, hopefully. And then speaking of photos, another thing that I suggest, because I struggle with this, is if you are driving to the parks in your own vehicle and parking at the parks, take photos of where you parked. I am notorious for having no clue. Like if I'm not with my husband, all is lost. I am lost.
People like putting the alarm thing on and the like walking around.
I try not to. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do, Kate. I literally took my daughter with me to the mall the other day because we were looking for a Christmas present for my son. And we got out of the car and my daughter is starting to learn letters and numbers. And so I looked at her and I said, okay, you're my helper. Let's look at the row that we parked in. And it was like row B, entrance 3 or something like that. And I was like, you're in charge of helping mommy remember. And my kids know that I have a terrible memory. Like it's just awful. And so we started to walk back out and my daughter was like, mommy, I remember. Here's where we parked. I was like, thank you. You're so helpful.
Oh, that's good. I love that. So you can also use your kids. Take a picture, but also make it a memory thing.
And don't rely on your 5-year-old. I would not rely on my 5-year-old when I park at Disney. As much as she would probably do fairly well remembering, she's also 5. So
you don't want to put that on your kid. Like it's fun if they can remember. but like kids always tried to remember like what floor we were on and what room we're in, like, and that is something I also highly encourage you is to teach your kids. I've mentioned this before, teach your kids your room number. Because you don't know if my kid, when he was little, found his way outside the door while we were sleeping because he's that kind of kid. And we had forgotten to throw the latch because my grandma had left while we were doing bath time, and we didn't even our brains didn't register you need to throw the safety latch. So he was 3 and he got out of our hotel room, and the only way that he came back to us is because I taught him what room we were in.
Mm-hmm.
So always teach your kids to memorize their room number just in case.
Yes, super smart. And then also screenshots of plans in the app. If you've got kiddos that have phones and you want to share, hey, this is especially if you're going multiple places, maybe they're going off to do this, you're going off to do this. Okay, we got to meet at this ride at this time. Here's the screenshot of what our plans are. Those types of things, if that works for your family or your situation, can be really smart. Especially if you don't have, a lot of the times if you've got 2 adults, you can divide and conquer. One go this way, one go that way. It's not necessarily possible if you're going by yourself and you've got older kiddos with you.
Right. Absolutely.
And then again, like I said, share any of these photos with your older kiddos. So if you've got older kiddos that are responsible enough to help you and you want to, share with them, okay, here's the photos of your siblings that we took this morning. So that way you have them too. Here's a photo of where our car is in case we get separated and we need to meet at the car. You never know. And I try not to be paranoid. I try to be prepared, but you never know what might happen. So just being prepared and having that all on hand, I think can be helpful. And hopefully you never need it.
Yes. For sure. I hope none of you ever need it, but it's always good to be safe than sorry.
Yes.
This is something the next thing is something we've talked about before, but utilizing those family restrooms and baby care centers. I think those are so important when you are traveling with littles and you're by yourself, because it really can, especially the baby care centers, because they have sometimes little movies on that they could maybe watch while you're maybe nursing or whatever you're doing. You just need a few minutes to have them in a safe space where you can breathe and sit down, because that always having to be hyper vigilant about where they are and if they're safe. Obviously you can't just let them roam and do whatever you want, but at least it's in a safe location, in a quiet space where you can just take a breath for a little bit.
Yeah. Absolutely. The other thing that I love about the baby care centers is they always have an extra large bathroom that usually has a smaller potty for little kiddos that might need it, which can be super helpful if you've got a little that is really nervous to use the potties that are really big and automatic.
Loud toilets.
Yes. If it's possible, it may not always be possible for you to get to the baby care center when they need to go. That's just life, and you just, as a parent, have to be prepared for that. But if you're nearby, choosing to go there to use the bathroom might be a better place for you. And like Kate said, much less crowded, much less hustle and bustle of the bathrooms. There's so many people around. The bathrooms are in constant use from all sorts of people. So
also a great place to go if you've forgotten supplies that you need, like baby wipes or diapers, or they have everything, like deodorants and stuff. They've got all kinds of things at the baby care center. So it's, even if you don't have a baby and you need something, I've gotten deodorant from there before when I might have forgotten mine.
Hey, it happens.
It happens.
Right.
Yeah, and then family restrooms too that are located around the parks. There are restrooms that are available for if you just need space to go with your kid. But even in a regular women's bathroom, there's extra large stalls, and there's multiple of them. So you don't have to feel well, I'm taking this away from somebody who might need it, for differently abled people that might need it. I think that they accommodate that. The fact that some families, you can't just leave your child necessarily outside the stall and they have to come in with you. I remember those days. I'm glad those days for me.
Oh, I am I don't know what it is. This is one of my things as a helicopter parent that I will proudly admit that I'm a helicopter parent, but I am still not totally comfortable with my 7 and 5-year-olds being alone in the bathrooms. There's just a lot to unpack there that I'm not going to get into. But so I force them to come in with me, and they don't always like it, but it's you know what? I talk to them about, I need to have my eyes on you so I know that you're safe. It's just something that mommy needs and something that is going to keep you extra safe. So we're going to just take turns, and we'll turn to give you your privacy so you can go, and then we'll take turns, and we'll all be safe that way.
Yeah, it's gotten easier as my kids have gotten older, especially because I have 2 girls. And so usually if I'm not out, one of the other ones are out, and they can kind of use the buddy system. So that helps a lot. I think if I just had one, I probably would have a little bit more anxiety about it. But my kids are also much older now than yours. So it helps once they get older. And we always have the rule of do not leave the bathroom without me. That was the one that we taught, especially at Disney, because there's multiple exits sometimes to the bathroom. So
Right.
you don't know where they go. So I'm like, don't leave the bathroom.
Right.
Fine.
Right. And honestly, it's funny because my 5-year-old, she would probably be better about just like standing right outside. But my 7-year-old newly diagnosed with ADHD kiddo is probably more likely to find something interesting and wander off and go look at it, not intending to leave and not meaning to worry my anxious heart, but it just is what it is. So he is my kiddo that I'm like, nope, I gotta be able to see you.
Right. No, I totally get that.
Yeah, I did have a comment in here that is a good point that we've talked about before, that using a Mickey sticker or a Post-it note or something over those toilets for your kiddos is always helpful. And we've done that before too. So definitely a good tip.
I also have a comment from our earlier thing that we were mentioning from Chris. Says, if your child has a magic band, Disney can help find them too. So if they're currently wearing your magic band, they can also help find your kiddo. So
I never thought about that.
Thank you, Krista, for mentioning that.
Yeah, too bad my kids won't wear their magic bands.
Mine will. So I'm happy.
They're on my bag 90% of the time.
You find your bag if you lose your bag.
Perfect. I mean, that's important, it's good. But yes, so all of those things to be considered when you're, looking for a safe place if you need to use the restroom, baby care centers, family restrooms. Some of the places in the parks even have companion restrooms if you're able to utilize those. So different options there. This next one is one that I have personally had issues with when my husband and I have like divided out to do things is when you go to eat meals, you really need to think about strategically how you are going to handle, and this is not only just Disney, this is everywhere, but how you're going to handle that. So first of all, mobile order. Do not stand in line with your kiddos because it's going to be hard for them to stand in line no matter how old they are, especially if it's around a mealtime when they're super hungry. So mobile order is your best friend.
Sounds well, you're like trying to decide what everybody wants to eat. It's so stressful.
Yes.
I remember that.
And oftentimes I overplan everything. I am the person that I know where we're going to try to eat, or I have maybe 2 options of where we're going to try to eat. And I know what my kids are going to order. So I just have it like ready to go in a spreadsheet because I'm that person. And I just pull it up on my phone and then I just plug it in and then we're good to go. And I just like double check with them like, hey, you want this, right? And they're like, yeah.
If you're not Jackie, another thing you can do is if you're waiting in line for a ride, which inevitably you will at some point, that's what we usually do is we turn to everybody while we're waiting in line and be like, what do you want to eat? Here's the options, show them the things, have them bag them out. And we've talked a lot about mobile ordering in general, so I don't know if we should go too deep into that, but the idea just using mobile order will save you in a lot. And some of the times, depending on the location, sometimes they'll give your order in like a bag or something. It'll make it easier to carry all the stuff out. Not all, but some places.
And that is the major thing that is so hard is when you mobile order or order it all or are waiting for your order, you've got to think ahead about, okay, do I have a stroller that I have to also handle? Do I have kids that can sit at a table because they're old enough and they can wait for me at the table? All those things, coordinating how many trays am I going to have? The cast members are there to help you. So make sure you ask for help. Often there are cast members just standing kind of in that area that I'm sure would be more than happy to help you carry a tray to your table. So ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have older kids too, they can usually help you carry something, maybe not a full tray full of food, but maybe they can push the stroller, maybe if a younger sibling and stuff like that. So don't be afraid to ask your kids to, just help out a little bit with those things too. So
Yeah. And sometimes depending on where you're going, and this is hard to, decipher like, okay, this place is this way, this place is the other way, but sometimes it's easier to take your stroller in with you. And sometimes it's easier to leave it outside. So like you may want to do like a scope out of the area if it's a new restaurant that you haven't been to before. Some places are drastically one way or the other. And some places it's like, it's your preference, but like some of the tables are really close together and you're not gonna be able to push a stroller between them.
right. And it just makes a huge hassle for everybody. I agree.
Yes. So keep that in mind. But yes, mobile order, have a plan.
Then you could also do table service if your budget allows for it,
Yes.
because it might be easier for you in some situations where you don't have to carry your food to something. Or Jackie does a lot of picnicking, I know, too. So that might also be an option if you're on a budget, but you don't want to worry about the hassle of carrying food places, or maybe you just order some small things that are easy to carry, and then the rest of your meal is something that you packed for lunch. So you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of options, but just again, you just got to kind of think ahead, especially if you're someone who maybe isn't used to solo parenting. If you're someone like Kate was mentioning, where she just kind of takes her kids, solo to the park. Those are kind of those things that you're like, oh, right, I don't have a person that can sit with the kids while I go get the food, or I don't have, those types of things. So if you're
like, forget the forks or something.
yes.
Oh my gosh, now I have this table full of food and these children, and the forks are way over there. And luckily my kids are old enough now that I'm like, hey, go get us some forks, or I'll go get some forks. We'll be right back. But when they're little, you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
I don't have any napkins. I don't have any water. And it just becomes like a huge thing.
Yeah.
It happens too when you just travel solo. Like I feel like I sat down with all of my food. I'm like, I don't have a utensil and all my stuff's here and it's over there. So think about
Right.
this plan.
Right. And I will say most of the quick service restaurants that I've been in at Disney have some sort of condiment, utensil, napkin dispenser somewhat within eyesight. So like,
Yeah, you can kind of run.
yeah,
Kind of get back. It just really depends on where you're at. It happened to me today. I was like, I was having food for lunch. I was like, oh, okay, gotta go get that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on, let's keep rolling here because I have to go have dinner soon. So let's next up is don't overexert yourself. I think this is a really great tip because it's like take a stroller or don't. You had a little insight into this, Jackie.
Yeah, my kids are really at the age where this last trip when we just went in November, there were some days that we did not take our stroller with us, and there were some days that we did. But like I know physically who I am as a person. If I was traveling solo with both of my kids and trying to do a stroller, I am not strong enough to manipulate our double stroller with both of my kids in it through the parks. It's just not something I can physically handle. So if man, listen, I know. Well, it's like my kids are to the age where like, especially my oldest, he chooses to walk most of the time. But like, because here's the other thing that me as a parent, again, this is a lot of my input and take it or leave it and no judgment for anyone who's different. But for me as a parent, if I'm going to be solo in the parks with both of my kids and I have a stroller, you're in the stroller when we're walking around because I can't push the stroller and have a hand on you. And that doesn't fly for me personally.
It's really frustrating to have to manage the stroller and be like watching them and they move at a separate pace. And you're like, no, like everybody in the stroller so we can get to where we need to go.
Yes, exactly. And I just know physically I would not be able to handle that, especially when you think, no, the majority of the parks have fairly flat walkways, but there are some hills and there are, especially if you're thinking about like coming to and from like Magic Kingdom, if you're taking the monorail, it's a hike to get up to the monorail platform, different things like that.
Like exercise, a calf workout to get that stroller up that hill.
Yes. So if it were me and I was taking both of my kids by myself, I would have to plan those leg breaks accordingly. And that would go into my plan of if I'm doing a sit down meal, if I'm alternating, waiting versus Genie Plus, a little bit of that maybe to help. If I'm doing some shows in between, lots of different ways that you can do that. Or if we're taking like a full on resort break in the middle of the day. So lots of different options, but just really think about, don't try to do too much because you'll just your kids need you in that moment, and if you have overexerted yourself and you have tapped out, no one's going to be having a good time at the parks. So
Yeah. And if stroller is not something that you want to do, but you know that your kiddo is maybe like toddler age or younger, sometimes like the little kid, like I'm trying to the carriers, right, that you can carry your kiddo in. Like we used one that was, I don't remember the name of it. It's Ergo. I think I used the Ergo carrier. I was like, what was the name of it? And it was transitioned from the front to the back. And so we could carry them on our back as we needed as they got a little bit older. And that thing saved us so many times, especially when our kids got tired, but our kids would not sleep in the stroller. I don't know. You guys who have kids that sleep in the stroller, I'm so jealous. Like,
mine wouldn't either.
But they would sleep if I was carrying them. So that one really saved me a lot, especially when I was by myself or I had my kid while my family was elsewhere. It was really easy to be able to carry them around. So I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah, lots of different options for that. They also have now, I've seen like ones that you put kind of on your hip for like older kids that they can sit on while you're holding them to save your arms. Lots of different options for that type of thing. So definitely something like that.
That looks amazing.
I know. I'm like, I'm jealous. My kids are too big now. Yeah. But also along those lines of taking a break, utilizing quiet spots in the park. If you need a break, use like things like playgrounds for the kids to burn off energy. There are several playgrounds across the parks, depending on where you are and what parks you're visiting, where they can burn off energy. I mean, just off the top of my head, I know of a couple that are at Epcot. Magic Kingdom has a couple places you could go. You can go to Tom Sawyer Island. There's lots of different places that you can go if you just want to sit and be able to see your kids while they burn off some extra energy.
Yeah, and here in Disneyland, they have in Toontown, there's like the Goofy's house has all kinds of places where they can run and play, and you can sit and just watch them or play with them, depending on what you need. They used to have a kind of big grassy area for the play-in, but they've been using it for stroller parking recently, so it's a little bit less likely that they'd run around that area. Toontown's a great one. And then over in California Adventure, Redwood Creek Challenge Trail is really great. It is, depending on the age of your kids, you might have to run around with them because it's a really big space. So when my kids were really little, we had like the area with the slides. We just like parked it there, and my kid would run up and go down the slide a couple of times, and then I could sit down and have a break. But if your kids are older and you feel comfortable, they can probably run around there. But that's a good place to get energy out too.
Yeah, even something just as simple as like finding a space where it's a little bit of grass or a little bit of shade or whatever. And if you've got bubbles with you or you've got something like that can, that the kids will run, if you've got littles, it'll run around and play, and be content with that for even just 2-3 minutes so you can catch a quick breather, drink some water, and then be ready to go again.
Yeah. Yeah. Also like the jumping fountains at Epcot is a really fun place too. They can kind of like try to catch the water and things like that. So
yeah. And we talked about earlier utilizing those baby care centers. Like Kate said, oftentimes they'll have a movie in there. They'll have little tables and chairs that the kids can sit at while you sit on the benches, lots of different options for that. So just make sure that you're taking that into consideration when you're making your plans and knowing kind of where you can go if you get to a certain point in the afternoon and you're like, we need a break.
Yeah. And I would also say, I think, and people who are solo parents all the time probably already know this, but people who maybe are taking a kid solo who aren't used to doing it, just, it's tough because you don't have anybody there who you can hand your kid off to, and so for all people who are traveling solo with kids, make sure you find a time to take a little mental break for yourself, whether you take a break back at the hotel maybe and let your kid watch their favorite show or read a book or whatever it is, that you can have a little time away to adult for a little bit, because it can get very exhausting being always on because there's nobody else that is watching your kiddo. So that's my advice. Take time for yourself as well.
Yes, I think that's great advice. So that kind of wraps up our little section on solo parenting. Like I said, this is kind of a hodgepodge episode of a couple different topics. So we're going to jump now into some advice for if you're traveling in uneven numbers, or if you know that you're going to be going on certain types of rides in uneven numbers. We want to kind of give a little bit of advice. There's not a ton we can say other than here's some advice for specific rides.
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a family of 5, and the world was built for the family of 4. Everything is built for a family of 4. It is very frustrating to travel with a family of 5, to the point where I'm just like, this is just ridiculous. Like, now Disney does make some accommodations. They have things like hotel rooms that hold, 5 people and whatnot. I can't even imagine having more than 5. So God bless you if you've got more than, 3 children. But but it does make it is like a lot of Disney things, luckily, are not all designed just for a family of 4. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So taking a few seconds to review your ride choices, because we talked about, we always talk about planning and prioritizing those ride lists, and determining which ones you might need to plan ahead to figure out how your kiddos and grownups are going to sit. So there are several rides that will seat 3 or more across, depending on your needs. So lots of them at Epcot. 3 Cabs, Figment, Living with the Land, Soarin', Mission Space, and Test Track will all accommodate more than just 2 when you're going on those rides. At Hollywood Studios, Star Tours, Tower of Terror, and Alien Swirling Saucers will accommodate more than 2. So those are all rides that you'll be good to go. You won't have to worry about what combinations you're going to use for those. Quite a few at Magic Kingdom. The Railroad obviously is one with those bench seats. Jungle Cruise, Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion. You can typically squeeze 3 in if you've got if you've got smaller kiddos. We squeezed all 4 of us into Haunted Mansion on my last trip with my daughter on my lap. And the cast members were like, "You sure?" We're like, "Yeah, we're good." Because we wanted to ride together.
3 adults is not, unless they're tiny adults. 3 adults, he's not. Because Kirk and Lev and I all squeezed in one, and I was like, "We are in here."
Yeah. On my trip in May, my friends Becca and Ellie and I all squeezed into one dune buggy, and it was real close.
You're like, "Hey, here we are."
Yep. So that one has kind of an asterisk by it, so to speak, because if you've got littles, you'll probably be okay. Yeah. Small World, Mad Tea Party, and Peter Pan will all fit more than just 2. So you'll be good on those. And then at Animal Kingdom, Dinosaur, the Safari, and Kali River Rapids will all seat more than 2. So this next little list is kind of like what we said with Haunted Mansion. These ones you could probably squeeze if you need to. I would not say, we're talking about squeezing with kids here. So we're not talking more than 2 adults.
Yeah.
But if you had to squeeze, you could probably squeeze more than 2. Probably not more than 3, but you could squeeze 3 on at Epcot. Nemo, you could squeeze into your clamshell. You could squeeze 3. At Magic Kingdom, there are several that are kind of set up to appear as 2-seaters that you could squeeze. Magic Carpets, Big Thunder Mountain, Dumbo, Pooh Bear, Peter Pan, Little Mermaid, the Speedway, and People Mover.
Yeah.
So those are all ones that you could squeeze. And then in Animal Kingdom, Triceratops Spin you could squeeze as well.
I was trying to think about these for Disneyland.
I know, and I couldn't find a good list for Disneyland. So most of them, if you've got a lot of the ride vehicles for like the dark rides are very similar to what you see at Disney World for Disneyland. So most of them will seat 2, or you could squeeze 3 if you've got little kiddos with you.
Yeah, like Space Mountain in Disney is 2 and 2. So you'd be okay for that. And then I'm like trying to think of all the others, but there are a lot of them are similar to Magic Kingdom. So the things that we said here pretty much apply. Peter Pan's Flight is different. So it's another one. It's only one bench seat versus there's two in Magic Kingdom. So that is, you probably max could fit three, like two adults and a child probably, or adult and two children. But yeah, I think just in general, thinking about what ride you're going on and how you're going to do that. And again, it got tricky for us because when it's just me and my husband, and then I have one kiddo that was like too young to ride by themselves, but other two that could, and so then I just had to like do this combination of like, okay, well, who's going to sit with the one who can't ride by themselves? Or if you have multiple ones that can't ride by themselves, you got to, split that up so that it works. It's a lot of mental math of like who's sitting with who. Unfortunately.
Yeah. And it's like we mentioned earlier, anyone who is under the age of 7 has to have someone 14 or older riding with them. I was like, wait, how did they? So just keep that in mind. And thank you. Yes, I missed somehow that Rise of the Resistance is 4 in a row too. I don't know how that got missed off my list. So thank you for that. But yeah, so again, you can look up if there's certain rides that you're like, I don't know how many, or you haven't been on it before and you're like, I don't know how it works. Lots of things that you can just Google online or look up a point of view, or, lots of ways that you can find that online. That was just kind of my off the top of my head list that I could think of when I was thinking down through all of the different rides at the parks. So
yeah. Kayla's saying she didn't know I had kids. I do have three. I have kids. I have 3 kids. I have a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and an 8-year-old. How to think about that because she just turned.
I was gonna say you just had birthdays.
But they all changed. So I've got 3 kids. So that's why we do this podcast of Mom Street USA, to help parents and people who also go to the park with children have better Disney vacations. So
yeah.
Speaking of which, single rider options are also an option for that. But obviously this would be for older kids that are, I guess, technically older than 7. But, that depends on your comfort level, like we talked about. But if you can use single rider and everybody's okay with not sitting together, this is really critical. Don't go on single rider and expect to sit together. Don't do it. It's very clearly single rider for a reason, because they're just pulling you to fill a seat. That's So have a plan to meet up with your kid at the end. Wait for me at X place if they go ahead of you, or, maybe you go first so you can wait for them at the end, whatever works best. But in Disney World, they have Test Track, Expedition Everest, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Smuggler's Run. Here in Disneyland, we have Goofy Sky School, Incredicoaster, Radiator Springs Racers, Grizzly River Run, Web Slingers, Soarin', Smuggler's Run, Matterhorn, and Space Mountain all have single rider, and they're great if you're solo in the park. They're pretty great. But there are also things here in. A lot of people don't know that Soarin' has single rider here because it's not labeled. So you have to go up and like ask for single rider, and they'll like put you in the right place for that. So it's kind of like a hidden secret rider single. And then there's also the buddy pass for Monsters Inc. that they have here. And I've just recently heard about this, but it's like one because they seat, what is it? 2 and 2 or 3 and 3. Like you have to have like 2 of you, and then you can ask for a buddy pass, and then you can bypass the line to get to it. I need to do a little bit more research into that to know exactly how to do it. This is something I recently.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of that. So yeah, I would. If you find out more, please share with us on a future episode or in the Discord.
There's another one for another ride, and I can't remember what it is. If anybody does, please speak up in the chat, because I haven't used it myself. I've just seen other people use it. So yeah, and I have a question. Do we think that Rise should have single rider? I don't know where they would put it. They would have to do the exit or something, which would be interesting because of the way the queue works. So I don't know.
Right.
Do it.
Because you would, right, like it's not set up to do that. And if they put you in, you'd have to go into the initial pre-show.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's necessarily a need, because you have so many people funneled through the pre-shows at one time. I don't know that there's necessarily as much of a need for a single rider at Rise just because of the multiple pre-shows and the way that you're kind of pushed through as a group and you meet up with the group in front of you. So I feel like there's enough people that they probably can just very easily pull from to put single riders in. But I've been on Rise a couple of times where I've been in like a group of 3 and they don't put a 4th with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting. It would be nice to have that option. I think it's single rider. I'm always pro.
Right. I mean, short answer, yes. We would love to have single rider options on multiple more attractions if it's possible. But like, again, some of them it just doesn't make sense to. Some of them there's no space to. So it really just depends.
And I will just mention, just from a Disney history perspective, single rider was kind of a Walt Disney, like he really was an advocate for the single rider option to get people that capacity level up. But we didn't really see it come into play until the rocket rods came about, and rocket rods broke down like constantly, and they had terrible capacity because of that. So to move people through there faster, that's when they really started pushing that single rider option. And ever since then, it's really been kind of just part of the park culture. About that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
who'd have thought that there was a history and a story behind single rider lines?
Behind everything, Jackie.
I know. Okay, so I think that kind of wraps up just some general information about uneven parties. Again, you just really have to plan ahead, know who wants to ride what. Know if you've got people that don't want to do some of the thrill rides, it may solve that problem for you. So just really talk to the people that you're traveling with, find out what everybody wants to do, and make your plans accordingly.
Yeah. So shall we move on to our third part of this hodgepodge variety show?
Yes.
Which will be traveling with thrill seekers and non-thrill seekers, basically people who want to do 2 different things. What do you do in that situation? And this comes up a lot because you've got maybe kids that are too scared or too young or too short, don't want to do thrill rides, or maybe some older adults that are like, I don't want to do a thrill ride. Or you have teenagers that want to go do all the thrill rides, traveling with also, you know, anytime you have this like mixed group, it becomes very complicated very fast because people are like, I don't want to do that. I want to go do this. So what do we do, Jackie? What do we do in that situation?
So my biggest suggestion is there are often other attractions or activities that can be done while you're waiting. Most of the time it's going to be your thrill seekers are doing a thrill ride and everyone else that doesn't want to do that is waiting. Okay, so what does that look like? The first thing that I will always suggest is if you're utilizing Genie Plus, it's super easy to do. You can very easily select and unselect people from those different times. Now, it is tricky to get times that always coordinate with each other. So it really just depends on the day. It depends on how busy it is. It depends on what rides you're trying to do. Lots of different things with that. But it is possible to do that on Genie Plus. So I get that question a lot because I do so much with the app. It is possible to only have 2 of your 6 do Big Thunder Mountain because the other 4 don't want to ride it. You can absolutely manipulate that on the app. So that's where I would start. Yeah. From there, you just got to look around.
I would not include the people who are not going to go on the ride on that reservation because then you're just creating a big headache for yourself. Yeah.
Yes, because if they don't then tap into the lightning lane, it will mess up your ability to book your next one. So just don't even include them. If they don't want to ride it, don't even put them on there because it'll be much easier. And even if you don't book something for them in the meantime, it will still be easier because once those that are riding the throw ride tap into that lightning lane, the people that are not on the ride can be booking the next one.
Yeah.
So just don't even put them on there.
Don't put them like they don't exist. No, just kidding.
No ride for you.
No ride for you. No food for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love Jackie. Jackie is so great. She made up the list of, because I've been busy at Disneyland this week, obviously, this list of main thrill rides at each park and a suggested non-thrill activity to go with it. And then I looked over the Disneyland ones to help her out a little bit. But do you want to talk about Magic Kingdom a little bit?
Yeah. So again, these are what I would consider thrill rides. Different people have different opinions on what thrill rides are not. Don't come for me. This is
rides that maybe kids would be uncomfortable or too short to go on. Like let's just go with that definition, right?
Yeah. Yes. So at Magic Kingdom, Big Thunder Mountain is one. So with Big Thunder Mountain, places nearby that you can go to do. There is still the play space that is by what will future be Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Last I knew, that play space that was from formerly Splash Mountain was still open. If someone who has been to the parks recently knows different, please let us know. But last I knew, that little play area that they had at the exit of what was Splash Mountain is still open. So that is one place you could go. You could hop on the railroad if the line is super long for Big Thunder and your people are planning on waiting. Hop on the railroad and take it for a spin. That'll take up a good amount of time.
So we're
yeah, exactly. And then kind of down and around the corner, you've also got the Tiki Room that is not too far away that you could go and enjoy the show over there for that as well.
Yeah.
And
we have this. Do you want me to go?
Go for it.
We have the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train nearby. We have Little Mermaid ride is nearby, as well as Pooh, and then the teacups are also there. So those are all really easy ones. And if it was a really long line, you could also maybe do Enchanted Tales with Belle. That's around the corner too. So if your kiddo wants to do that one, I always love that attraction, and I always forget it's there because it was closed so long.
Right. Yeah. Seven Dwarfs is an easy one. There's so much around that you could do. You could even venture up into Storybook Circus and do Dumbo, or walk through the shop, or there's character meetings. There's a ton to do around there. I just kind of picked the 3 that were closest.
Yeah. Sure. There's so many things to do there.
Yeah. And then Tron is the big thrill ride that just opened, most recently. It's a little more out of the way. So my suggestion is, if you're going to Tron, depending on which direction you're approaching it from, you can approach it from, like we just talking about, Storybook Circus area. There's a ton to do in there. If you're approaching it from Tomorrowland, there's not as much on the way. So I would stop at either the Tomorrowland Speedway or venture up into the teacups, and then you're kind of in that area of Fantasyland again where you have a lot to do there as well.
Yeah. I have a comment too that says Tom Sawyer Island is a great one also for Big Thunder Mountain. That is really close to there. So I agree. That's a great one. And you didn't list Space Mountain, but I would say the stuff that's by Tron also applies for that. And like the People Mover is in that area as well, and Astro Orbiter and all those kinds of things. So lots of things to do in that area. I think Space and Tron pretty much the same area. So you can do those things.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed that one. Sorry.
It's cool. I was just like, I think Space is on there too. I would consider that a thrill ride. It was like the original one.
Right.
But
and I have it down for Disneyland. I just forgot it for Disney World.
And I just want to put this out there that from another Disney history perspective, there were really no thrill rides when Magic Kingdom opened in 1971, because they thought they were planning, like Disneyland was a local community, like was the ones that mostly went to the parks. Even though they were planning it to be a vacation destination, they still assumed a lot of it would be locals, and they thought a lot of the local population of Florida was maybe on the elderly side. So they planned a lot more shows instead of thrill rides, and they quickly realized that they needed to remedy that over the years that we have. But that's why Magic Kingdom has so many sit-down shows, is because of that reason. So it's curious.
Good to know. No, that's great. So let's hop over to Epcot. A couple thrill rides in Epcot. Now, I will say there are some other rides here that are dark rides that might have drops or might have kind of a few little spaces that might be considered thrilling. I'm not including those on this list, kind of going for the more big thrill rides like Kate and I mentioned. So at Epcot, Cosmic Rewind, obviously Guardians of the Galaxy is a big thrill ride over there. Lots of different options there. They've got a couple play places in Mission Space, a play place by Connections. There's usually one right on that side, right outside there. It's usually themed to whatever festival's going on. If you venture kind of towards World Showcase, Three Caballeros is right around the corner that you could do that as well. So lots of different options and lots of just sights to take in at Epcot, I feel like.
Yeah, they got all that new area they just put in with all the lights and stuff too. So if it's at nighttime, that's a fun place again.
Yeah, and it was interesting because as I was looking this up, pretty much the majority of the thrill rides at Epcot are all like on the same side of the map. So those options kind of hold true if you're looking at something like Mission Space or Test Track. Test Track is questionable as a thrill ride. You know, it's kind of just got that fast part towards the end. So give or take if you choose to consider that a thrill ride. Same with Mission Space. It's a thrill ride for those of us that maybe don't appreciate the type of attraction that is.
No Mission Space for me. And if you wanted to wander a little bit further too, you could walk over to Moana Journey of Water. That would be a really great place too to take the kids. It's just a tiny bit of a longer walk, but not that bad. So
well, and now that center space is open in Epcot, it really opens up a world of possibilities because you can go towards Spaceship Earth, you can cut straight across, and you can go towards Figment or Nemo. They're really not that far now that you can actually walk through the center, and you're not having to go out and around to get to things. It's really not that far when you're going between those two areas.
Yeah, I'm not gonna know what to do with myself because I'm still used to the walls. So maybe I'll just keep walking around just because I don't know how to go through anymore.
Right.
That's pretty much Epcot in a nutshell because those are the major thrill rides. Should we move on to Hollywood Studios?
Yes.
So we've got Smuggler's Run. So while you're in that area of Batu, you can do some bounty hunting, which is a great one. I just use the Play app. I haven't used it in a long time.
Yeah, it's with your Magic Band Plus. It has to be a Magic Band Plus if you're going to do that. So not the old school ones, but the new fancy LED chargeable ones. And then yes, the Play Disney app. So those are the only two things that you need. There's like a screen that you start on that will send you kind of all around, and it's like a giant game of hot and cold. Super fun.
Yeah, that's really neat. You can also do shopping in the marketplace, and or you can walk out and go to Muppets. And I think you could also go the other way if Aliens World Saucers didn't have that long of a wait. You could go that way or Midway Mania. Those do tend to have a longer wait. So it depends on how long Smuggler's Run, how long the wait is there, if you want to attempt one of those.
Yep, absolutely. And I don't know why I didn't put these together on the list, but we'll talk about Rise of the Resistance quickly since we're kind of already in that area. Same idea. They're both in that same Galaxy's Edge area. So depending on which way you want to walk, if you're walking towards the marketplace, if you're going towards Toy Story, if you're going back towards Muppets, all of those options hold the same for if you're waiting on someone doing Rise of the Resistance.
Yes, sure.
And then we've got Rock and Roller Coaster as another, and Tower of Terror. We'll kind of combine those two together as well because they're basically in the same area. That area is a little more secluded, not as many options if you don't want to walk too far. They do have the Lightning McQueen Racing Academy show that exists at the far end of that walkway as well, which is a good one. It's super cute. Like even if you've got a little bit older kids, maybe might not want to. The Lightning McQueen animatronic, I guess you would call it, is really cool. So, I think it's neat.
Yeah. Someday
add it to the list of.
Yeah.
And then they've also got the Beauty and the Beast musical that is on in that area as well. So if you time that accurately, I think they do show times every hour from it's usually 10-ish to 5-ish, depending on the day. So check your app for times for that. But you might be able to sit and catch that while your party goes and does both a Rock and Roller Coaster and Tower of Terror, depending on the timing.
Yeah. Okay, so then we also have Slinky Dog Dash, and that again is like what I said because it was right next to Rise. So it's going to be like Aliens, Swirling Saucers, or Toy Story Mania are probably going to be your major two. Or you could grab a snack at Woody's Lunchbox there and just sit down and, well, if you can find a seat.
So true.
Seating is not as ambitious for me to say you should sit down, but you could grab a snack there and maybe stand and eat it in the sun.
In the sun.
All my memories of eating there is always standing in the sun to eat.
Yeah, it's not easy to find seats there, that's for sure. Okay. Let's hop over now to Animal Kingdom. A couple different thrill rides over here. Flight of Passage is one over in the Pandora area. Really, the best thing that you've got there is if you want to do Navi River Journey. Or I mean, even just walking around in that area, they've got lots of little interactive. They've got like a little drum area that the kids can play the drums. They've got lots of, especially if it's towards evening time, if the park is open that long, it gets really pretty and lit up. There's lots to look at. So walking around or doing Navi River Journey are your best options there.
Yeah, sure. And then when it comes to Dinosaur, which sounds like it would be a kid-friendly ride, but it's really not. It's terrifying for children and really quite violently bumps you around. So just keep that in mind. The warnings are accurate for that. There's Triceratops Spin. There's also carnival games. You can also look, there's a couple of animals that are there. There's also the Boneyard if it's open. That's a play space. So they can
yes, that's true. That's one that I always forget about because I feel like it was closed for so long. Yeah, but it has been reopened again. So yes, I would add that to that list for sure. Yeah.
Boneyard, it's like a big old playground with only one entrance, so that's good. If your kids are older, they can run around by themselves, or you can run around with them if they're littler and you need to keep an eye on them. But there's only one way in and one way out, which is always great as a parent to not have to worry about them running out. So that's helpful.
Absolutely. So then also Expedition Everest, another thrill ride at Animal Kingdom. A couple different options for this one, depending on where you're headed or where you're coming from. The theater for the Finding Nemo musical is not far away from that. It's just right across the bridge. So if you've timed that correctly, that is an option. Keep in mind, though, that show is like a full half hour. So if you're planning on that, maybe if it's a half hour wait for Everest and your party's going to wait, that would be, and the timing is right, that would work out. You also have kind of back the other direction, Kali River Rapids and the Maharaja Jungle Trek walking trail for animals. So a couple different options that you could utilize if you're in that area of the park.
Yeah, that's a great option because you can kind of control your timing for that too, because you can speed up if you know they're probably going to go out sooner. You can take your time if it might take a while. And there's also a lot of little places in there to get snacks and stuff too, which is nice.
Yeah, I will say with Everest, if the line is not terribly long, my kids love sitting. If you go all the way to the end of the walkway towards the mountain, there's some benches that you can sit and watch the trains come down through the mountain on the ride. My kids love sitting there, and they could probably sit there for 20 to 25 minutes and be perfectly content.
Yeah. It's fun. Mm-hmm. Something about that is like you watch the one go up and you watch the one come down, and yeah, it's very satisfying. I don't know why.
And it's fun because like we've been able to like catch like my husband when he's been on, when we've been watching, we're like, oh look, there he is.
I've done that with Elliot because he will. I'll go on once, and that's like as much as I can do, and then he'll continue to go on it, and so I'll just sit there and wait for him and just wait as he goes by. So no, that's great. So I think that's all for Animal Kingdom. Should we hop over to Disneyland?
Yes, let's talk about West Coast.
So Big Thunder Mountain, what's nearby, the Mark Twain / Columbia, depending on what's running or what's going around. Right now, the Mark Twain is still under refurbishment, so it's just the Columbia. The Tiki Room is not very far away. Nothing's really that far away in Disneyland. You guys know. Also, I threw in there storytelling at Royal Theater only if it's running on that particular day, and check the show times for that. But that show is wonderful, and I think not enough people go to it. So storytelling at Royal Theater is really fun.
Go there and make Kate happy.
And then the Adventureland Treehouse, which is now reopened. Huzzah! It's a really fun one that doesn't take very long to go through that one. So you might be able to combine two things to do that. Maybe have a snack and do the Adventureland Treehouse. Then there's also the Gadget Coaster, which is actually a pretty small coaster, so most kids probably would do that one. But those, if you have one that wants to and one that doesn't, there's tons of stuff to do over in Toontown. I would say that's also good for Roger Rabbit Spin. Some kids don't want to go on that one for some reason. Maybe it looks a little more intimidating. But there's character meets. There's just exploring Toontown in general with like Goofy's house and whatnot. And then there's also Runaway Railway. That would be harder to do just because it's a long line. So you have to budget time for that. But Gadget Coaster is pretty long too. It's only, a 23-second ride, but the line is super long. So there's only one. I will
That's
stop
crazy.
because I just won't wait for it anymore. I can't live my life. I have other things to do.
Right. You're like, no, thank you. Also in Disneyland, we've got the Indiana Jones Adventure, which is very similar in a lot of ways to Dinosaur, which we just talked about in Animal Kingdom. Can be fairly rough for kiddos and for non-kiddos too. So some options that are nearby there: Jungle Cruise, the Treehouse again, and Pirates, depending on again wait times and those types of things. But those are some other options that you could use for that.
Yeah. Some kids are super intimidated by the 2 drops on Pirates, though, so keep that in mind. My kids hated Pirates because of the drops for a long time, and they're just now starting to come around.
Yeah, my kids got mad at Pirates when we just went to Disney World because we got wet. Because the Disney World one, I feel like over the last 2 years has gotten more, like you get more wet on it than you ever used to. And I always forget to remind my kids. And my son was really unhappy with me.
At least that, you know how when you go on Frozen and like the back of the seat is wet?
Yep.
You always come off with like being wet in the back.
Yep.
That's how Pirates is here. That I feel like I'm always coming off wet.
And that's what happened to us at Disney World. We sat down and my son looked at me and was like, Mom, this is not okay. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
There's literally nothing you can do. You're like, man, this is our life now. Now you're just wet. And when it's cold outside, it's even worse.
Yeah, he was not happy with me. And yeah, the cannons, right? Becca said the cannons. The cannons will get you on there too. So it's not just the drop, it's the cannons too.
So true.
Yeah, so Pirates maybe not, depending on your kids.
Yeah, so then also the Matterhorn bobsleds, you can go a lot of places. It's pretty much next to Fantasyland. It used to be part of Tomorrowland, now it's part of Fantasyland officially. There's the Teacups, Storybook canal boats are the closest to that. But there's also Alice is right there. The Small World is right around the corner. You can go, Autopia is not that far away either. Finding Nemo submarines is around the corner if you want to go get claustrophobic. There's lots of things to do.
You know, I thought about putting the submarine on my list, but I was like, oh, I don't know if kids would really enjoy that because I have not been to Disneyland yet. I have not done it yet.
The kids, I feel like, mostly really like that ride. It's very kid friendly. They use the same technology as they do in the Nemo that's in the seas over in Epcot.
Mm-hmm.
They use that same technology for that ride as they did for this one. So it's very similar in that way. But it's very fun for kids because they actually go in a submarine under the water. Like, when do they ever do that? So most kids, I would say, probably actually really like that ride. And it's parents that are like, oh, okay.
So plan accordingly with that one. In Disneyland, they also have Galaxy's Edge with Smuggler's Run and Rise of the Resistance. Kate and I were messaging about this one. It's real far away. Yes. So plan accordingly if you're going into Batuu and you know that you've got people that don't want to ride Rise or Smuggler's Run. Depending on which direction you're coming from will depend on maybe what options you choose for that one. Kate, do you want to give a little insight on that for us?
Yeah, so if you're coming in there's 3 entrances to this area. So there's one that's like from Fantasyland into Frontierland. There's one that's mid-Frontierland, and there's one that's on the other side in Critter Country. Okay, so if you're coming from Critter Country, you could backtrack. You could go do the Haunted Mansion. You could do the canoes. You could go do Pooh. You could do Tom Sawyer Island. You could do the railroad, which is a little farther walk for that. You can do anything on that side, right? Or you could go the other direction. You could go and go to Fantasyland and explore Casey Jr. and Storybook Land, canal boats, and all the things like Snow White, Pinocchio, all the things, right? Carousel. So it really depends on where you go, but it is, because it's just kind of tucked way back in the back of the park. This is why this area of the park also closes early, and the rides, the wait times drop at the end of the night because nobody's back there. They're all in the front of the park. Yeah. Fireworks and stuff. So they close Rise early here in Disneyland. The queue for it closes before the park closes, which is really, really different for Disney. So just be aware of that. But yeah, if you're in that back 40 of the park, then you're going to have to walk somewhere to get to something if you're not going to just hang out in Batu. So I would maybe just recommend getting a snack or to split before you go to Batu.
Yep, I was gonna say plan so you don't even go into Batu. Like unless you want to see it and walk around in there, obviously. But like if you're like, nah, I'm good, then just don't even go all the way back there.
Yeah, there's some characters and stuff that walk around, obviously, that are really fun to see, and Baby Yoda and all those kinds of things. So there's fun stuff to see there. It just is, it's not the best for having like littles. There's no ride for littles there. So that's all.
Yeah. And then I think the last one that we didn't talk about yet was Space Mountain. And really, Autopia is your best bet with that. It's the closest. But again, like Kate mentioned, there's a ton of stuff within walking distance. Pretty much anywhere you're at in Disneyland. It just depends on what your group wants to do. But Autopia would be your closest for Space Mountain.
Yeah, Buzz Lightyear is not that far from there either. You could go do that one, but again, that wait can get really long, so it really depends on what's going on. There's no people mover, so not bitter about that at all. Also, my subs is in that area too. It's near there, or you could take a ride on the monorail because it will go.
That's true.
It'll go to the Disneyland Hotel, but then it'll make a loop and come back, so you can always do that as well.
True. So see options.
Should we go to California Adventure?
Yes, let's. So first on the list is Goofy's Sky School. And there are 10 options depending on what you choose to do. So you can do Jumpin' Jellyfish, the mermaid rides over there, the Golden Zephyr, Silly Symphony Swings. Kate added a pro tip for us. You can hang out in the shady Paradise Gardens area.
Nice there. Unless they have live music. That's a nice little escape. And you can also meet Coco and the Plaza de Familia. Also, the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail is not that far, which we've already mentioned earlier, but that's not that far from there.
Yeah, perfect. And then another thrill ride over in DCA, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. Again, a couple options over there. The Red Car Trolley, the Animation Academy is not far from there as well if you want to go draw while you wait. And Turtle Talk with Crush are over in that area as well.
Yeah. Then we have the Incredicoaster over on that side. I love that they put, it used to be in the Bugs Land area. They rethemed it and put it over here. It's the Inside Out Emotional Whirlwind. It's kind of like sitting in the middle of the roller coaster. It's a very strange place for it. Some people don't even know it's there if they don't like walk back in that area, but that's a really fun one for littles. Also Jesse's Critter Carousel, always a win for kids that like carousels. And then and then everything else from Goofy's High School. If you walk around the bay there's all kinds of things. And if your kid likes Ferris wheels, don't go on the swinging ones unless they really like thrill rides. But the non-swinging ones, as long as they're not afraid of heights, that's also an option. They just can be really slow loading, so it might take a little bit longer to go on that one. So,
yeah. And then if we venture back towards the Cars area, Radiator Springs Racers, again, kind of on the same lines as what we said with Test Track. Some people may consider that a thrill ride. Some may not. Just depends on your personal opinion. But if you are someone who does not choose to ride that, either Luigi's or Mater's Junkyard Jamboree back in Cars would be options that you could use as well. Cars Land tends to have longer waits for a lot of their attractions, so just plan accordingly. You may not be able to easily jump onto one of those other ones and wait. Just really depends on timing.
Yeah, for sure. So then Grizzly River Run is the last one, which is pretty intimidating to a lot of kids because that's a really big drop in it. And some kids just don't like getting wet, which is also valid. So I would recommend the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail for that. It's right next door, right across the way. I think they designed it that way so it would be an easy place for kids. So I don't really have many recommendations beyond that because I think it's a great one. And there's so many areas of it that there's stuff for littles and stuff for bigger kids as well. So,
yeah, perfect. And I do want to mention that kind of wraps up the majority of our list. I think hopefully we hit everything other than when I forgot Space Mountain earlier. But if you are curious about a ride, if you're visiting for the first time to the parks, check out the app, because if you click on the attractions on the app and you scroll down on that particular attraction, it will tell you like what ages they suggest. It'll say kids, tweens, teens, everybody, like it'll give you some more input for that. It'll also tell you if they consider it, if Disney considers it a thrill ride, or if it's a dark ride or slow moving or drops. There's all sorts of information on there. So utilize that because that can be really, really helpful when you're planning, especially if you've never been on something before.
I was finding new things in the app that I didn't know were there. Like, I use it, and I'm like, I literally use this thing all the time, right? Like every month I'm on this thing. But, I really love also the guest services tab. I think is one that people overlook a lot, but that's where it'll locate your baby care centers, your first aid stations, charging areas for like fuel rods and things like that. There's so many things that will tell you the services that are available. So that one's a really helpful one too.
Yes, absolutely. So definitely use that to your advantage. Again, this was kind of a hodgepodge episode. That kind of wraps up that particular section of information that we've got for you this evening. Shall we hop into our Ask the Moms for tonight?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you do not know, we end every podcast episode with our Ask the Moms segment where we take a question from our Mom Street community. That may or may not be related to the topics of our podcast episode, and we do our best to give you guys some answers. So our Ask the Moms tonight is a little more complicated than some of the questions that we've had recently. And the question is, does everyone in my travel party need their own login for the app? So we were just talking about the app. So let's see, how we can help with this. And can one person handle all of our reservations and booking for everyone? And how does that work?
Sounds like an excellent question for you to answer. Looks right up your alley. I'll play all the history. I stuff.
Okay, so let's handle the first part of this. Does everyone in my travel party need their own login for the app? Short answer, no. But it really truly depends on your situation. If you're all in the same family, for example, my immediate family, my husband does not have his own login. He uses mine. He can do everything he needs to do. We can both do everything we need to do in the app. It will not interfere with each other if you are both in the app at the same time. So that's section 1.
So I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. So the only thing that it would interfere is it won't let you double book things. So if you're both in there trying to get a virtual queue, whoever gets it first will get it. The other person's not going to get one. So that's the only instance where it interferes with itself kind of. But as far as anything else goes.
The only other downside I could see with that is if you say you needed to try to make a dining reservation that overlapped with another one and you couldn't because you were already booked, you would need a separate email address, a separate account to book that other one. I think that's the main reason that Elliot made his, was because I needed a second account to book something that was overlapping at the time. I don't remember what, but yeah.
Probably that tends to be the reason. And that's why I would say if you, on the other side, if you've got more than one family traveling together in a party, let's say you've got, for example, if I were to go with my extended family, it would be my parents, my sister and her family, and then me and my family. So that would be 3 different families. I would suggest all 3 of them having a separate login, just for instances like that. One, you're going to be able to book you're going to need a login to be able to book your resort. If you're staying on property, you're not going to be able to you probably could book everything through the one account, but it gets a little more complicated when you're going to you can use your app to unlock your room and different things like that. It gets a little bit more complicated. And then dining reservations are the big one, because the app will not let you book multiple dining reservations with conflicting times. Yeah. So occasionally when you have bigger parties that you're traveling with, if you need to book for a party of 10, maybe you want to split it down to 5 and 5 to see if you can get reservations easier that way. And oftentimes you can.
Yeah. We did 4 and 3 or something. We had a really big party. Mm-hmm. So we split it.
Yeah. So you definitely need, like Kate was mentioning, you definitely need 2 accounts and 2 emails for that instance. So again, yes and no. So the second part of the question for Ask the Moms was, can one person handle all the reservations and booking for everyone? Again, yes and no, kind of similar to what we just talked about. If you want one person to handle it all, then you're going to need to give them your login so they can manipulate whatever needs to be manipulated. That's what I'm really good at. That's what I often do. is doing.
Because you do it for me
I
sometimes.
I do. Now, I will also remind you that giving your login to someone needs to be someone that you trust, because there is information in there that you may or may not want someone to have access to if you don't know them. Again, if you're traveling with them, chances are good that that's fine and no issues there. But just
They will control to like cancel your vacation and stuff too. So you have to be very careful with who you give that to. Yeah.
yes, Kate trusts me. So so just keep that in mind. And basically how that works is just the one thing that you really do want to make sure is that everybody is linked in your party. And that is sometimes the biggest headache. And oftentimes if I'm helping people do that, I literally will just tell them like, it's not that I don't trust you to do it, but just give me your login, because it's way easier for me to just go in and do it, because it's like 6 different steps. And Disney has recently added new steps to where you have to give individual people specific permission to view all your reservations and your photo pass and this, that. Like there's so many options now, which is great if you're someone that utilizes it a lot or has an annual pass and is linked to lots of different people. That's fine. But if you're just trying to link for it's just a lot, especially if you've got kids on multiple accounts, because they don't have their own logins. You have to like go through 4 extra steps to add them. It's a lot. So just find someone that knows what they're doing to help you, because trying to do it on your own is a headache. But I will also say, if you don't get it done before you get to Disney, that's fine. Go to your front desk, go to your concierge. They will be able to help you do it at your front desk before you get into the parks.
Yeah, I will say at Disneyland, it just works differently in terms of tickets and accounts and things. They're similar, but not the same. So if you are going from one park to the other, just know that it's going to be a little bit of a different ballgame in some ways. Genie Plus works very similarly in most ways, but not all. But I think the biggest thing going park to park is I always forget to transfer my Magic Band, the ticket on my Magic Band. I was like, I always have to unlink it and then link it to my other ticket. Because then I go to the park and they're like, but you don't have a ticket. I was like, wait a minute. Yes, I do.
Right.
This person that gets out of line and fixes it. So just know.
So Disneyland has an extra step in there. So
just know that if you're going to Disneyland, it's a slightly different than Disney World. And so make sure you're prepared for that.
Yeah. And in Disneyland, you really truly only link someone by adding their ticket to your account. It's not
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not a friends and family situation. It's very different. So you literally just add their ticket. And once their ticket has been added to your account, then you're able to book for your party. And again, this is important for doing things like Genie Plus.
Yeah, you have to do that unless they're going to book theirs separately, which becomes a huge headache. Like, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Moral of the story. Does everyone need their own login? Yes and no. Can one person handle all the reservations and booking? Yes and no. So it really just depends on your situation. Again, I will always encourage people, if you need help, please reach out. I had someone this week in Pocket Fam that was like, hey, I know that you know what you're doing. Can you help me link my family? And I was like, yes, I can. So reach out if you need help. I am more than happy. Kate is more than happy if she's able to help you, to link you and all that good stuff. It's a lot of steps.
If I'm not gonna lie, just because I have no time to help anybody in that. So I'll be like, here's Jackie's contact info.
Kate, don't ask Kate. Never mind. I take it back. She doesn't want to help you. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Advice that I can talk history, but I just don't. I can't. I'll be like, I don't know.
Yes, and I do a lot in the app. I help a lot of people with their itineraries in Genie Plus. So it's like second nature to me, and I have gotten fairly decent at explaining it. So
yes. Well, that's great. I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. Yeah.
Yes. So as always, thank you to those of you who have submitted questions for Ask the Moms. If you are someone that has questions that you need help answering, please send them our way. We haven't talked about the Discord much in this episode, but you can find us on our friend Kirk his Discord, the Walrus Carp Pocket Fam Discord. We have our own Mom Street channel on there. You're welcome to send us a message on there. You can find us on all the social places, TikTok and all those good places. And if you prefer email, we are momstreetusa@gmail.com.
And we always love hearing from you guys and your questions and comments and ideas for new episodes. And again, we are so grateful to be part of the Chip and Co podcast network for Mom Street USA, a really wonderful family to be a part of. So that is where you can always listen to those episodes first. And then eventually they do end up on our Mom Street YouTube and our regular podcast as well. But they always premiere on Chip and Co. So in case you're looking for these episodes later. So.
Yes, and I did get the question way back at the beginning that I didn't have a chance to answer. They do, like Kate said, eventually end up on our own channel. So our YouTube channel and our Spotify, Apple, all those places where you can find podcasts, they do end up on there about a week after they premiere on Chip and Co.
Thank you guys for being with us tonight for Mom Street USA. We really appreciate you guys hanging with us and learning all things about planning your Disney vacation, making it easier and more magical for your family. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on Mom Street USA.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.